This episode is brought to you by Freestyle Photographic Supply.
This one feel good. When it hits you in the chest like, all right. Hey, don't it feel good? Yeah. When it hits you in the chest like.
So you want to get into that motion, huh? You're tired of that still life. You want to step foot into that fast-paced lane, the 24 frames a second, film purring, hand on the trigger, feeling that celluloid fly through your fingers. You thought still film photography was addicting? Think again, and then again. That first time that I hit that celluloid switch and heard that baby sing, ooh, I never look back. I've shot 6,000 feet of film over the years. That's like 6 cruise ships. I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise or not, they're big. So today I actually thought it would be fun to dive into the differences between Super 8 and 16mm film. They're the most common and easier to get started with formats. I'll be skipping over 35 motion picture film, mostly because I doubt that you'll have access to it or the funds to shoot it. I haven't even shot it yet. My dream is to shoot 35mm motion picture film, specifically 2perf with the Penelope. But I do have a thing for Aton. And if none of that makes sense, well, don't worry, it still won't by the end of this video. Now I'm gonna break this video down into a few sections. The different formats, cameras, how to shoot the different formats, the pricing of everything, and last but not least, what's right for you. Also think of this as a starting guide. It's not gonna get super granular. I'm only gonna hold your hand so far. You're gonna have to do the rest yourself. But a fair warning first. If you're not ready, and if you're too scared, then turn back. Don't walk this path, stay ignorant, just don't do it. Okay, now that I have that little disclaimer out of the way, let's have some fun. Yeah, I put a hat on because my hair was bothering me. I needed to really style it before the video, but I didn't. Now, there's really only 2 flavors of 8mm film. Super 8 and regular 8mm. Oh, well, I guess there is this thing called Double 8, but I don't really want to confuse you at the moment. And I'm confused even making this video, so you get the 2. But today we're actually really only gonna focus on Super 8 since, well, that film is the easiest to find and can be purchased fresh and spanking clean. Now, when it comes to 16mm formats, you get your standard 16mm and your Super 16, and you got Ultra 16. And no, I'm not entirely making up Ultra 16. I know it sounds like a Japanese character from the 70s, but it's not. And we're really not gonna be talking about that either since, well, that would be talking about modifications to an existing camera. And at this point, you're probably just dipping your toe in. So let's not overcomplicate things yet. Super 8, being the smallest of the motion picture formats, has an aspect ratio of 1:36. 16mm has an aspect ratio of 1:37, and Super 16 having an aspect ratio of 1:66. Think of the movie Jackie or Blue Valentine. Actually, don't think of Blue Valentine. That's sad. It's really, really good. Sad. Super 16 is almost 4 times the surface area as Super 8, and 16mm is about 3 times Super 8. The main differences between 16 and Super 16 is the amount of image exposed to the same strip of film. Think of medium format cameras and the difference between those formats. It comes down to the amount of film exposed on a 120 film, like 645 versus 6.7 versus 6.9. Same concept. So Super 16 is just exposing more of the film than 16 is. There was 2perf 16mm, but that's not really around today. When it comes to purchasing the film, Super 8 makes it really easy. It literally comes in a cassette. No, not that type of cassette. Close. It's a 50-foot cartridge that you just pop in. But 16mm comes in 2 different types. One is a 100-foot daylight spool that is friendly to load, well, in the daylight. And another one comes on a core, which is in 400-foot cans. And that cannot be loaded in the daylight. It really should have been called Vin Diesel core. Pitch Black? The movie Pitch Black? Where he can really only see in pitch black? And you only can load the core in pitch black? Yeah, okay, fine, that was a bad joke. But the movie was shot on film, so. Now let's talk about cameras, because unlike 35mm stills, motion picture cameras actually do matter at this stage. And I know what you're thinking. Me saying cameras don't matter is really rich, especially coming from a guy who has an entire closet full of them. But truly, if you want to start shooting 35mm still photos, you can pick up the cheapest hunk of junk, and as long as it has a good lens on it, you will get an image. And technically that's true for motion picture film, but there is far less to choose from when it comes to 16mm. Now let's start with the smallest of the formats, Super 8. Now what I'd like you to do is go to your grandparents' house, dig through their attic, boom, done. You got yourself a camera. And if you don't like your grandparents, Suck it up for like 30 minutes. They'll probably fall asleep anyway. Okay, so if that doesn't work, then go to the magical land of eBay and start searching. I myself have a Bolex, which the name Bolex is top shelf in the world of film. Overall, Super 8 cameras are easy to find and relatively cheap. Depending on the model, they can range from $25 to $400. But do be warned, they are mostly battery powered. So just like when buying stills camera, ask the seller questions, make sure there's no funny batteries, and just do your research. You could also YouTube models to see if people have shot with the camera before, and you can check out the lens quality. With a format as small as Super 8, you want a good lens. A couple to check out are Bolex 160s, Canon auto zooms are really popular, and Nikon's made a beast of the camera that Jason actually owned. One big thing to note is because Super 8 was made for the dumb mass public people, a good majority of them do all the work for you. So basically, you just have a few settings. So if you want a more professional Super 8 camera, which is kind of an oxymoron, then you're gonna have to pay more. When looking for a camera, just make sure it takes a Super 8 cartridge, and it works. Now moving along to that sexy, scrumptious Super 16 and regular 16, you informally have two camps, professional and prosumer. In this case, professional cameras are gonna take 400-foot core spool film, and prosumers are gonna take the 100-foot daylight spool film. I kinda just put them in those two camps and made that but it seems to make sense to me. On the professional end, you have my Aton, you have Arri SR series, and I guess there is also the Claire, but look at that thing. It's gross. Then on the more prosumer end, you have a Bolex, you have a K3, and you have Arri again. Arri just dips their toes in everything. Now, the thing about these cameras is that they're not cheap. We're talking anywhere from 600 to 18K. Luckily, I got my Aton when I did, cause that's 18K. Bolexes and K3s are going to be your most common, I'd say. And you might find a Bolex for cheaper than 600, but I can't guarantee that it will be the model that you can see exact framing through. There are things called Rex models, and there are things called non-Rex models. I don't know what they're called, they're just not. Rex models, you can see your frame exactly. It's what actually Jason has. And non-Rex models are just viewing almost approximations. You'll have to do all your lens calculations from distance. You'll have to measure the laser pointer things and stuff like that. There's actually a ton of different Bolex camera models, and they're all slightly different. So if you're into the Bolexes, I would do some research because there's a ton. And K3s, unless professionally serviced, can get a little dicey. But I'm not gonna pass judgment. I just know sometimes there's a lot of gate weave, and you don't know what gate weave is? You know what? Actually, Google it. Anyway, I digress. Just do the research. Sorry, I can't put everything in here. Also, a big thing to note is that unless you're buying a professional 16mm camera, you will most likely be relegated to regular 16mm and that 137 format, unless you get your camera modified for Super 16. Sometimes people sell modified Bolexes, but sometimes not. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to buy any of these things, you can always just rent. Nothing wrong with renting. I mean, I'll never own a house in my lifetime, so I'll be renting for a while.
But speaking of film, what's a better place to load up than Freestyle Photographic Supply? Freestyle has been in the game since 1946, supplying photographic tools for professionals and photo nerds alike. That's 76 years of straight up knowledge. They are one of the largest analog photo distributors in the US, supplying not only schools, which is important, labs, which is also important, and camera shops as big as B&H and Adorama, which, I mean, is really important too. Freestyle has a massive selection of all the films you can think of. If you can name it, they have it, and more. And if you're looking into printing your ever so beautiful photos, Freestyle is the place to go for either traditional darkroom enlarging materials or inkjet printing. They have a printmaster on staff to answer all those Q&As that you might have to get you started. Freestyle is striving to get film into the hands of those who love the medium and want to keep exploring the love for all things film. I recently teamed up with the folks at Freestyle to be a part of their new advisory board, so I'm really excited to share more in the future. So if you're new to film or you have been shooting since birth, Freestyle is the place for you to go for all your photo and film needs. Just check out the links in the description below. Okay, now let's get back to shooting some film.
Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna run down how to shoot with these cameras. For Super 8, you load the cartridge, you pick your frame rate, you point the camera at something, you pull the trigger. It's that easy. For 16mm, you load the film, you attach the lens, you pick your frame rate, you meter your light, you set your aperture, meter your light again, you point the camera at something, you meter a third time, you pull the trigger. It's that easy. Honestly, the chances are you already know how to expose film. especially if you're watching this channel, because I do a good job of teaching, but there's really no difference. Especially since I'm sure you've already dabbled in various motion picture stocks available for the stills on the market today. And at the very least, you've shot in a still. The biggest difference is depending on your frame rate, the exposure will change. The faster the frame rate, like 54, which my Aton can do, then the darker the image will be. The adverse of that is if you go slower, like 18 or 6, the brighter your image will be. Oh, and your shutter speed, more accurately called your shutter angle, you peasant, will be stuck on one angle for the most part. So that means you really only have the film speed and the aperture to address your exposure. So yeah, a little bit more limited. Deal with it. Now, one cartridge of Super 8 is 50 feet of film, which at 18 frames a second will give you 3 minutes and 20 seconds of footage. At 24 frames, you will get 2 minutes and 30 seconds of footage. Whether all that footage is usable depends on your skills, and I'm not here to speak to that. Now, one 100-foot daylight spool for 16mm at 18 frames a second will get you 3 minutes and 42 seconds of footage. At 24 frames per second, which you'll most likely shoot at, will get you 2 minutes and 46 seconds. So they're kind of in the same ballpark, even though one has 50 feet and one is 100. Kodak does have a nifty little app to help you gauge your foot per minute. And for all the shits and gigs, a 400-foot mag will get you about 11 saucy minutes. That's how I shot so much. It can go fast if you're not watching it. But if you are still a little apprehensive and you want to try still film first, check out Midwest Film Co., where they sell motion picture stock and they will develop and scan it for you. And you can kind of get that whole motion picture process for stills. When I was shooting cassette tape, I knew I was shooting a lot of black and white, so I ended up getting XX and shot stills so I would know what the film would look like. Okay, so up to this point, we have gone over all the differences in sizes and the difference in the cameras and what's on the market and how to shoot them and all that fun stuff. Now we need to dive in the more costly portion of this entire process. Sure, cameras can get expensive, but overall, that's a one-time purchase, and developing and scanning can add up fast. And is technically what you have to do every single time you shoot. You know the game. And unfortunately, the home options aren't as easy as buying a mirrorless camera and a macro lens. People have made some DIY Super 8 scanners, but honestly, that's beyond my technical expertise to explain. And I've tried to make one myself. Kind of. As much as just Googling it. In all my years of shooting Super 8 and 16, I've used a ton of different places to develop and scan, some more expensive than others. And most likely, you're gonna have to ship all your film out anyway. But you might be asking yourself, Caleb, you live in LA. There must be so many options to drop film off too. Yes, I do. And I don't really suggest them for one reason or another. And we're gonna just keep it at that. Trust me. I've been to a lot of places. So the place that I have recently started to use is called Negative Space out of Colorado, the entire state, just out of the entire state. Overall, they're the best price for value, and setting up an order was super easy. And the two things that can affect price is resolution and the amount of footage you are going to get developed. More Ks equal more money. More film equals more money. Simple. You might be tempted to spend the extra money on extra resolution, going up to 4 or 6K. But for basically all of my films over the years, I've scanned at 2K resolution, and it looks great. No complaints on my end. Negative Space does have a 6K option, and I did use it, and it also looks great. But to tell you the truth, some movies are still being finished at an effective resolution of 2K after final matting and finishing, so I don't know, you be the judge. Just check out this footage from my two films, Cassette Tape and Stadium, both scanned at 2K. So pricing. For one cartridge of Super 8, you can get it developed and scanned for about $40, plus the film, which is separate, for around $40, give or take. That's a total price tag of $80. Now, for one 100-foot daylight spool of 16mm, you can get that developed and scanned for about $50, plus the film, which is a little bit more, around $65, for a grand total of $115 cash monies out of your bank. So to clarify, $80 gives you around 3 minutes of Super 8 film, and $115 gives you around 3 minutes of 16mm film. Another thing to mention is that none of this includes shipping, and you also have to supply a hard drive or a thumb drive with enough space for your projects. you made it this far. So what format is right for you? Well, there's a few things to consider. Will this be a fun hobby, or will it lead to you gaining professional skills? Do you want to think, or do you want to just spray and pray? And how poor do you really want to be? That actually might be the most important one. But who really needs money anyway? Really, I see it this way. If you want to dabble, shoot a little bit of here, a little bit there, and you don't mind the lower inherent resolution, or you just want to take some home movie motion selfies, Super 8 just isn't a bad way to go. Sure, you don't save a ton of money overall, and the cameras can be hit or miss depending on which one you go for, but it has a look, it has a feel, and a vibe, dare I say. Now, if you really love pain and sacrifice and a little bit of whipping from time to time, wait, it's the wrong hobby. Well, no, it's kind of right. Then 16 is yo daddy. That format is legendary and definitely superior to Super 8. Countless movies have been made on that format, and the cost really isn't all that dramatically different depending on the amount of footage you shoot. I should also mention that if you want to shoot a short film or even a feature film, you'll want to get a camera that can pull off some crystal sync speed. But honestly, if you're trying to get to that stage, then you have way more to think about than syncing audio to footage. I obviously love the look of 16mm, but it is more involved, and because my camera is heavier, I don't take it out as much. Maybe I should get a Bolex. Or maybe I can just borrow Jason's, with some supervision, of course. But honestly, if I could shoot all my YouTube videos on 16mm, I so would. Hands down, no question asked. If you're also wanting me to dive deeper in the world of motion, let me know in the comments and ask away. And if you're in the LA area, my buddy actually runs a workshop from time to time, all dedicated to the art of celluloid. So give ASCF Official a follow on Instagram and check out what they're doing. Well, that'll do it for me today. I hope this helped get you in the mindset for motion. Now, I have a fresh roll of E100 film in my fridge from the show Euphoria that needs to see the light of day. Okay, bye.